held its first debate over the weekend.
The economy is expected to expand 2.5% this year.
Boosting Korea's ties with its global partners on the sidelines of the status UN summit. There's a massive drone attack on Ukraine overnight on Monday and Tuesday.
Arirang.
In our headlines on this Wednesday, August 19th, here in South Korea. South Korea and the U.S. are downscaling their annual joint defense drills by ending them early as Donald Trump raises the prospect of dialogue with North Korea's Kim Jong-un reportedly this autumn. Here in South Korea, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi is in Seoul for a two-day trip that covers talks on a wide range of bilateral and regional matters, including North Korea. In his latest social media post, U.S. President Donald Trump rules out talks with Iran while claiming that the Strait of Hormuz is open and in operation. Iranian officials, for their part, have been quick to dismiss the latter claim. The Ulchi Freedom Shield will come to a close on Friday this week, 6 days earlier than its original date, following Donald Trump's recent demand for downscaling in joint defense drills with South Korea to pave the path for dialogue with North Korea. Our defense correspondent Park Go-nu has the latest.
The annual Ulchi Freedom Shield exercise, one of the two major ROK-U.S joint military exercises, has officially been cut roughly in half. South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff said Wednesday that this year's exercise will now end this Friday instead of the originally scheduled August 27th at Washington's request.
We are making some adjustments to the duration and scale of the exercise. We'll continue discussions on various measures to achieve the objectives of the exercise and maintain a strong combined defense posture.
The U.S. Department of War also confirmed the adjustments, saying the changes preserve essential readiness and training objectives, with no degradation to U.S. training objectives. Under the revised plan, the command post exercise, which uses war game simulations, will now end after the defensively focused first phase. The second phase, which targets counteroffensive operations, will be cut entirely. An additional 14 combined field training exercises scheduled during UFS will also be scaled back. The decision comes just 2 days after U.S. President Donald Trump asked Secretary of War Pete Hegseth to scale back the exercise, citing his very good relationship with the North Korean leader and criticizing Seoul for what he described as a lack of support with the ongoing Iranian conflict. On Wednesday, Foreign Minister Cho Hyun said that a message to scale back exercises had not been conveyed to officials in either country, and that he doesn't view the move as a unilateral decision by the U.S. He also added that Defense Minister An Gyubek has been in close contact with Washington since Trump's remarks. The comments come amid speculation that U.S. Forces Korea Commander General Xavier Brunson's visit to South Korea's Defense Ministry on Tuesday may have been related to discussions over the exercise. Questions have also emerged over whether the shortened exercise could affect the Allies' efforts to transfer wartime operational control. Cho dismissed such concerns, saying that since the reduction came at Washington's request, he doesn't expect it to be used as grounds for delaying the transfer. Defense Minister An also said Wednesday the adjustment would not affect the joint assessment required for the OPCON transfer, as that process takes place during the first phase of UFS, which remains unchanged. Park Go-nu, Arirang News.
North Korea, for its part, has reiterated its denunciation of the annual defense drills between South Korea and the U.S. In a commentary carried on this Wednesday by its state-run media, the regime claimed the drills were becoming increasingly dangerous and warned that it would respond with new and evolved strength. While the statement also condemned the participation of the UN command in the Ulchi Freedom Shield, it stopped short of acknowledging the recent scaling back of the joint military exercise at the request of U.S. President Donald Trump. Meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump's olive branch of sorts to North Korea is sparking rampant speculation about the prospects of direct diplomacy between Washington and Pyongyang. Our Unification Ministry correspondent Kim Do-yeon takes a look.
U.S. President Donald Trump has ordered a cutback of joint military drills with South Korea, aiming to open a diplomatic channel with Pyongyang. The Wall Street Journal reports Trump wants to meet Kim Jong-un during his trip to China for the APEC summit this November. Despite Washington's overtures, the Kim Jong-un regime has remained mostly silent, using state media instead to continue to denounce the ongoing ROK-U.S joint military exercise, Ulji Freedom Shield. South Korea's Unification Ministry assesses direct engagement remains viable.
Kim Jong-un stated that if Washington drops its hostile policy, there is no reason they cannot get along. With President Trump scaling back exercises, recognizing the regime as a negotiating partner could lead to resumed dialogue.
Analysts warn reviving talks will prove far tougher than during Trump's first term. The Kim Jong-un regime has since codified its nuclear status into law.
Pyongyang now approaches talks as a declared nuclear state, demanding concessions far beyond past symbolic freezes.
Deepening ties with Moscow and Beijing offer the regime short-term relief, but fall short of replacing global markets. Comprehensive international sanctions remain the primary pressure point capable of pulling Pyongyang back to the table.
More importantly, to attract actual investment, which requires sanctions against the regime to be eased, U.S. North Korea relations must improve.
Analysts see Trump's push as a bid for a quick diplomatic victory amid prolonged tensions in Iran, with the midterm elections coming up in November. Also something Pyongyang would consider in terms of Trump's intentions. Seoul, however, hopes the move can break a years-long deadlock.
We hope this development leads to meaningful U.S. North Korea dialogue and expands into broader improvements in inter-Korean relations.
The question now is how far Washington is willing to reach to bring Pyongyang back to the table and whether Seoul is able to seize the opportunity. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
Also here in Seoul, Foreign Minister Cho Hyun is hosting his Chinese counterpart Wang Yi starting today for talks on a wide range of bilateral and regional matters, including North Korea. Our foreign affairs correspondent Oh Soo-young reports.
China's top diplomat Wang Yi begins a two-day official visit to Seoul on Wednesday at the invitation of Foreign Minister Cho Hyun. The Foreign Ministry says they will exchange in-depth views on Korea-China relations, the Korean Peninsula, and regional and international issues of mutual interest. It will be their first Foreign Ministers meeting in 11 months upon Wang Yi's first visit to Korea in nearly 5 years. Their meeting will be followed by a formal dinner. Attention then turns to the Blue House on Thursday. President Lee Jae-myung's office says he and Wang Yi will assess the future direction of bilateral ties and regional developments, with Yi also conveying his regards to Chinese President Xi Jinping. Watchers will be listening for whether Yi seeks Beijing's support for the multilateral dialogue he proposed in his Liberation Day address, aimed at replacing the Korean Peninsula's armistice with a peace regime. Wang will also hold talks and a lunch with National Security Advisor Wi Sung-rak. But experts caution against relying too heavily on Beijing to bring Pyongyang back to dialogue or endorse or even mention North Korea's denuclearization.
China now has very limited room to act. A key reason is the growing importance of North Korea's relations with Russia.
In wanting to maintain some form of trilateral alignment among North Korea, China, and Russia, this is not necessarily disadvantageous for China in building a front against the U.S. Thus, China has no reason to step in directly and try to persuade North Korea.
The talks may also expose a wider strategic divide as Beijing watches host U.S.-backed nuclear-powered submarine program and closer security cooperation with Washington and Tokyo.
From China's perspective, Korea acquiring nuclear-powered submarines would erode the strategic and military advantage Beijing has enjoyed in Asia since the Second World War. This is also intertwined with stronger trilateral cooperation among Korea, the U.S. and Japan, which China strongly opposes.
Analysts are also watching for practical economic deliverables, although technology competition and diverging supply chains still constrain cooperation. Ho says ahead of the APEC summit in Shenzhen this November, the foreign ministers' talks will assess progress in restoring bilateral relations and prepare the ground for further high-level exchanges. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
In other news now, researchers at the state-run KDI have revised upward their growth projections for the South Korean economy, citing stellar chip exports. Our Lee Ji-yeon has the latest outlook.
Korea's state-run think tank, the Korea Development Institute, has upgraded the country's GDP growth outlook for the rest of this year and next year. According to a report released by the KDI on Wednesday, it raised Korea's GDP growth forecast for this year to 3.2%, up 0.7 percentage points from the previous estimate in May. The institute also upgraded next year's growth outlook by 0.5 percentage points compared to its previous estimate. A KDI official explained that the upward revision was driven by expectations that the current semiconductor rally will persist. Exports and facility investments have shown strong momentum so far this year, and this positive trend is expected to continue on the back of sustained global AI investments. The growth outlook for goods exports this year was upgraded to 8.7% this year, higher than its May forecast. Likewise, the growth outlook for facility investments was also raised to 7.9% this year, led by global AI infrastructure expansion. In light of these economic developments, the current account balance is projected to record an unprecedentedly large surplus. Driven by surging semiconductor prices, the KDI expects a current account surplus of around $360 billion for both this year and the next. However, because Korea's economy relies heavily on global chip demand, experts warn that future fluctuations in the semiconductor market could trigger greater volatility.
The problem is that semiconductors account for 39% of our total exports, and exports represent 41% of our GDP. If the growth in semiconductor exports slows down, then the growth rate of our total exports could also slow down, ultimately lowering our economic growth rate.
Because Korea's growth has been heavily concentrated in the semiconductor sector, which has a low employment inducement effect, the KDI report also highlighted that the high growth rate has not translated into a clear improvement in the labor market. Therefore, despite the strong overall outlook, the report projects household-level economic indicators such as private consumption and employment to show only modest gains. Lee Ju-yeon, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, Finance Minister Koo believes AI partnership between South Korea and the U.S. will promote broader, long-term benefits. Our business correspondent Park Jun-han covers his remarks.
Korea's Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance and Economy Koo says now is the time for the world to pay attention to the Korean economy, especially as the AI era unfolds.
Korea has strong capabilities across the entire AI ecosystem, from infrastructure and chips to world-class manufacturing, industry know-how, and a wealth of real-world data. The U.S. is also Korea's most important partner in AI. By combining the ideas of American companies and their business experience with Korea's capabilities and commercializing them here before taking them to global markets, I believe we can make the global economy more efficient.
This comment came when Koo attended a special luncheon hosted by the American Chamber of Commerce in Korea, where Koo and AMCHAM Chairman James Kim discussed Korea's vision for long-term growth. Wednesday's discussion focused on strengthening Korea's position as a global financial hub, implementing bilateral strategic investments, and expanding AI cooperation. During his remarks, Koo outlined the government's 3-4-5 vision, where Korea aims to reach a 3% potential growth rate, position itself as one of the world's top 4 exporters, and achieve a per capita income of $50,000. He also highlighted capital market advancement tools, such as easing foreign exchange regulations and transitioning to 24-hour foreign exchange market operations. AMCHAM CEO James Kim welcomed the government's commitment. He noted that the strong AI momentum from tech giants like Samsung Electronics and SK hynix gives Korea a unique opportunity to solidify its position as a major investment hub and expand bilateral ties.
So as we commemorate the 250th anniversary of America's founding this year, there is no better time now to look ahead to the next chapter of the U.S.-Korea partnership. One defined not only by our security alliance, but increasingly by investment, innovation, technology, and public-private collaboration.
Minister Koo also noted he prefers calling AMCHAM member companies CORCHAM, emphasizing that American companies operating and investing here should be treated equally as Korean firms. He added that the government deeply appreciates their contributions and will do its best to maintain close communication and cooperation. Park Jun-an, Arirang News.
The Lee Jae-myung administration has designated artificial intelligence as a critical driving force for national growth. That being said, our Cho Young-un takes a look at how this ambitious goal is being advanced.
Artificial intelligence is rapidly expanding beyond the success of individual models, with competition now extending across a broader ecosystem of semiconductors, AI data centers, and physical AI. As AI becomes increasingly tied to national competitiveness, the South Korean government has set its sights on becoming one of the world's top 3 AI powers. The broader strategy builds on Korea's existing strengths in semiconductors, telecommunications, and automobiles, while seeking to connect them with AI to create a new industrial ecosystem.
소재 부품 장비 등 산업 생태계 전반을 함께 지원할 방안, 그리고 나아가서 피지컬 AI의 발전이 제조, 인공지능 전환의 역량 강화로 이어지는 산업 대도약 전략이 반드시 필요합니다.
Last month, President Lee also held a series of meetings with global big tech leaders and unveiled the San Francisco AI Declaration, signaling the ambition to position Korea as an indispensable player in the global AI supply chain. Experts say securing a leading position in the global AI race means more than developments in technology and innovation.
The first is how well equipped Korea is with infrastructure such as data centers. Then AI models are built on top of that, followed by data, and then the broader adoption of AI across industries to build industrial competitiveness. With all 4 of these elements, Korea can be considered competitive.
The expansion of AI infrastructure is also closely tied to talent, making advanced computing and research infrastructure essential to retaining domestic AI talent and creating the foundation for further growth. The goal is to turn these investments into stronger industries and ultimately greater export competitiveness. As Korea already has a strong competitive edge in manufacturing, experts say integrating AI into industries where Korea has established expertise could provide a more practical path towards strengthening its position in the global markets.
In the short term, securing industrial competitiveness is what matters. Even at the current level, Korea can build competitiveness by taking a full stack approach. There should be a focus on areas that the country is already good at, such as manufacturing, and find ways to integrate AI into those industries and turn that into exports.
As AI rapidly reshapes industries around the world, Korea's challenge is to move beyond developing individual technologies and build an ecosystem that connects infrastructure, talent, and industry, turning its AI ambitions into tangible industrial competitiveness. Cho Young-un, Arirang News.
In his latest social media post, U.S. President Donald Trump ruled out talks with Iran while claiming that the Strait of Hormuz is open and in operation. Iranian officials, for their part, have been quick to dismiss the latter claim. Our Lee Seung-jae reports.
U.S. President Donald Trump says Washington is not currently holding talks with Iran and has no plans to begin new negotiations, contradicting his earlier claims that the two sides had been in active discussions. In a Truth Social post Tuesday, Trump said there are no talks or conversations taking place or scheduled with Tehran. At the same time, Trump insisted that the U.S. naval blockade remains in effect and that the Strait of Hormuz is open and operating. He also said all water mines in the strategic waterway have either been removed or detonated. Shipping through the Strait of Hormuz has been severely disrupted since the war began, partly because of the threat posed by Iranian mines. The United States launched a mine-clearing operation in April in an effort to establish safe passage through the waterway. But Tehran disputes Trump's claims that the strait is fully open. Iranian Parliament Speaker Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf said Tuesday that the Strait of Hormuz will remain closed until Washington meets conditions contained in an interim agreement reached in June.
And let me make it clear, until America implements its commitments under the Memorandum of Understanding, including lifting the blockade on the release of frozen assets, lifting the oil sanctions, ending threats and military operations on all fronts, and other conditions that America has agreed to under the understanding, the strait will not be reopened.
That agreement, signed on June 17th, was intended to end hostilities and create a path toward a broader settlement. But it quickly began to unravel over disagreements surrounding control of the Strait of Hormuz, a crucial shipping route that carried about 1/5 of global oil and liquefied natural gas supplies before the war. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi also said Tehran will not accept another temporary ceasefire and is instead seeking a permanent end to the nearly 6-month conflict. Araghchi said Qatar and Pakistan have played important mediation roles, but stressed that contacts between Iran and the United States have not amounted to formal negotiations. The 60-day negotiating period proposed by Washington expired Monday without a permanent agreement. 이승재, Arirang News.
The U.S. Army has picked Hanwha Defense USA, a unit of South Korea's Hanwha Aerospace, to build prototypes for its mobile tactical cannon. Hanwha will deliver 6 mobile howitzer prototypes for the new self-propelled howitzer modernization program, with the option of 12 additional prototypes. The deal is expected to be worth up to $262.9 million US, and the U.S. Army says its soldiers will use these platforms in a series of operational tests to assess their performance in realistic combat conditions. Global long-term bond yields are rising sharply as concerns grow over U.S. debt, Japan's finances, and overall inflation. Our Kim Bo-kyung has details.
Long-term U.S. Treasury yields soared to their highest levels in 19 years, with the 30-year yield rising to around 5.33% during Tuesday's trading session. The yield on the benchmark 10-year U.S. Treasury note has also recently climbed to around 4.75%, reaching its highest level in 19 months. Japan's 10-year government bond yield also rose as high as 2.945% during trading, hitting its highest level since 1996. Long-term government bond yields in Germany and France also surged to their highest levels since 2011 and 2008, respectively. The sharp rise in long-term government bond yields comes amid growing concerns over inflation stemming from prolonged conflicts in the Middle East, as well as rising debt and fiscal deficits. According to the Washington Post, the U.S. national debt stood at $39.9 trillion and is widely expected to surpass $40 trillion this week. Concerns are growing over future fiscal burdens and increased government bond issuance in Japan, too, as Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi pursues expansionary fiscal policies to stimulate the economy. Another factor behind the recent global bond sell-off is the AI investment boom. Major technology companies such as Microsoft and Meta are issuing large amounts of corporate debt to purchase NVIDIA's AI chips and build data centers, creating competition with government bonds for investor capital. With long-term bond yields surging around the world, this could pose a threat to stocks, the market strategist says.
With yields rising, we have to really consider what we're willing to pay for stocks, because of yields, of course, represent the discount rate for those future cash flows that equities tend to trade on.
With the stock market seeing a robust pace of gains so far this year, the expert says stocks could face a rockier path this fall as investor focus shifts from earnings to potentially yields, with limited earnings information coming out. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
Heatwave advisories have now been expanded to all of Seoul and most other parts of the country. Tropical night advisories are also in effect for parts of Gangwon-do province and the southern regions, so please stay cool. As daytime temperatures climb, the atmosphere is becoming increasingly unstable, and we're seeing showers across parts of the southern regions right now. We're seeing some heavy rain across Jeollanam-do province, where a heavy rain advisory is currently in effect. Scattered showers will continue through this evening, with 5 to as much as 60 millimeters of rain. And especially along the south coast, where the ground has been weakened by heavy rain, we'll need to stay alert for possible damage. Tomorrow, Seoul will start the day at 24 degrees, Daejeon 23 degrees, and Busan 25 degrees. Then by the afternoon, Seoul, Daegu, and Gwangju will all soar to 33 degrees. From Friday evening through Saturday morning, rain will move into the central parts of the country. Now here's a look at the weather around the world.
Those are the headlines at this hour here in South Korea. Coming up right after this break is our daily panel session. Thank you for now.
오늘은 대한민국 임시정부를 이끌었던 김구 선생님의 백범일지를 살펴볼 거예요. 그분이 평생을 바쳐 지키려 했던
한없이 가지고 싶은 것은 높은 문화의 힘입니다. 문화의 힘은 우리 자신을 행복하게 하고 나아가서 남에게 행복을 주기 때문입니다. 나는 우리나라가 세계에서 가장 아름다운 나라가 되기를 원합니다.
As K-pop enters a new chapter, we'll look at how it's reconnecting with Korean audiences while reshaping the global music scene. Hello and welcome to Wednesday's edition of Press Perspective for August 19th here in Seoul. I'm Min Sun-hee. As K-pop reaches a new phase where Korean audiences are reclaiming a stronger connection to the music, global fans are demanding greater inclusion while countries around the world are drawing inspiration from the Korean wave. Today we explore how the industry is changing at home and abroad and what comes next for K-culture. For this, our freelance reporter David Lee here in the studio. David, it's been a while. Welcome back.
Good to see you, Sunny.
I also have Chloe Bogno with French broadcaster France 24 here in the studio with us. Chloe, it's lovely to have you here.
Hello, thank you for having me again.
David, let's start with your latest article. You wrote about the popularity of Korean girl group Lee Sen. What does it mean for K-pop to be reclaiming the K, so to speak?
Yeah, so really, K-pop has had a huge global following, for over a decade, and there have been fans around the world for a long time. But it was really when BTS, with their mega hit Dynamite in 2020, and they topped the Billboard charts. That's when really K-pop started to prioritize overseas activities, I guess promotions over domestic activities and appearing on TV programs and such, and music programs. This group, like you said, Risen, or most global fans call them Risen. This group, they're really from this small agency called the Muse Entertainment. The agency was considered a startup company when it started, and this group they had about 2 years of not being really recognized by the public, and they even performed at field days in an elementary school, pro bono, and they were also noted performing in the community center when they had no activities scheduled for them. But now today, their song "Love Attack" I think has topped the domestic music charts for I think maybe close to a month now. They've become the faces of global brands like Domino's. Recently they were playing in the halftime of the Kupang series with Manchester City and Atletico Madrid. So they've become really what I consider to be a national group, what K-pop fans call a national group. And I think it's really been a long time since South Korea has had one of those what we call national groups. And these groups are what is when the country really considers the members of a group to be their younger sisters. They also look at them as daughters or sons in the case of boy groups. But at the same time, they're also these idols that many of these people idolize. So what makes Risen really distinct from other major groups that have gone abroad and have topped and have dominated charts and have brought in millions of fans overseas is that Risen, their popularity really comes from being distinctly Korean, really tapping into their Korean heritage. And obviously they have a Japanese member, Minami, who's from Japan, but even for her, she really tapped into the trend in Korea of really liking Japanese culture. So, they're not really the perfectly polished idols that come from these major entertainment agencies like HYBE or YG Entertainment, but yes, like I said, they're really tapped into their Korean heritage. And even recently, I saw an interview with 17 member Vernon, he even said that K-pop these days, it's really becoming undistinguishable with pop music these days. You know, in terms of the style of music, and, you know, it's just in the way that they present themselves. That these K-pop stars, they're becoming a little bit more like these more you know, Western, let's say Western pop musicians, pop stars. And I think that kind of points to the sign that the identity of K-pop today, I think it's a little bit mixed. It's not the same as it was 10 years ago, and I think it's really changing at a fast pace. But Risen really reminds that K-pop's roots, that K-pop really started from its home, which is South Korea. So just to give an example, four of the five members, because you know Minami is Japanese, he's from Japan, but all four members who are from Korea, they became ambassadors of their respective hometowns. So you know, Wonnie, she's from Koje, and even Koje, they even reported a boost in tourism just due to the popularity of the group. And then other members from Suwon, Ilsan, and Gyeongju, they also became ambassadors of their hometowns. So I really think that Risen, they're really satisfying the Korean fans who were a little bit, they felt sidelined by the global popularity of K-pop. I think Risen really gave, they really satisfied these fans longing for a sense of place for K-pop and attributing K-pop to Korea.
Right. Chloe, what more can you tell us about the popularity behind Risen here in South Korea?
Yeah, so Risen is from, well, when this debuted, we're from a label that was kind of new, so smaller or mid-sized agency, and this is probably one of the big things that will explain a part of their identity, as David was touching upon. So, for example, the fact that it was not with a big production, so there was not a strong and marketing and communication team that would, as David was saying, in the biggest production, they deliver like polished and clean new idols. Here, it's been a bit different. So you can feel, for example, they kind of got famous again, like really started to getting famous these days because of a video that was posted on social medias of Won Iso, the leader, who was in Koje with Minami, and they were both talking and enjoying the time, and everyone started sharing snippets of it and talking about it, and it's kind of the new ways of discovering groups now and becoming fans through short form platform, and then also the algorithm-driven discoveries. So if you're interested in K-pop or in some specific groups, for example, then from watching more and more content, obviously your social medias are going to show you new groups. And even myself, I know that I've been seeing, even if I'm not that much into K-pop itself, I'm not searching for the groups, but I've seen quite a few of them. I know that Mamamoo, for example, also got resurgence of a new fandom through those fan cams and things like this. I've seen them, for example, most of my knowledge about them, or Stray Kids is from what my social media would feed me. So it's what's happening to a lot of people, actually. And the second thing will be also the fact that because the label is smaller size, they also can't do a big world tour. They can't do massive advertisement. They can send them on the best shows to speak about themselves. So there's a need to find other way to connect. And it's true that experts and people who are liking their group, like Risen, they're saying that their contents also feel distinctly human. So it's true in the lyrics that they're writing, but also true if you watch some of the music video clips, they are very much softer, probably less money has been put in it compared to some of the biggest hits, but then it gives another feeling to the song, and you will probably remember it more because it's kind of refreshing in these days.
Right, I see. David, you previously cited English lyrics as one reason behind the declining popularity of K-pop here in South Korea. What have you been observing since then?
Yeah, and I really think this goes back to how the norm of streaming music has changed these days. So music today is really consumed through these online platforms such as YouTube, TikTok, and Spotify. So, you know, there's more emphasis on physical album sales, which are significantly seen in overseas markets. As you know, these physical albums today, you don't really listen to CDs or you don't really need CDs to listen to music. So these overseas fans, because they have limited exposure to these idols in real time, they will buy these physical albums as memorabilia. And an industry estimate, it says that, according to an industry estimate, it says that overseas concerts accounted for nearly 50% of all sales in the K-pop industry last year. So it just really tells you how the market of K-pop is really concentrated, focused on the overseas market. And I think this goes back to your question of this balancing act between, having activities at home in South Korea and also spending time overseas where the market is. But frankly speaking, South Korea just doesn't really have the population or the amount of fans to really satisfy this market demand of today in the K-pop industry. This leads to even some agencies producing groups who, before they debut, they train so that they have the goal of debuting overseas rather than at home, which is something 10 years ago you would not think about in the K-pop industry. So it really tells you how things are changing so fast today. So this also leads to domestic fans who, as I previously mentioned, they feel sidelined by the amount of activities overseas. These agencies giving more priority to overseas activities, world tours. So for domestic fans, it's really becoming harder to see their favorite idols going to work at a broadcast station, which was a norm back in the days. So fans would line up in front of broadcast stations to catch glimpses of their favorite idols walking by. They would wave to them, take pictures. And it's also led to less fan signing events and other fan events in South Korea. And so today what you have is some of these major groups, they'll be dominating charts overseas, like they'll be dominating the Billboard charts, but at home, they won't necessarily be considered like a national group. They'll have less, popularity, if you can say, at home than abroad. And I think a really good example of the distinction between the effects of having more overseas activities for these top idols is that you can see with Blackpink's recent 10th year anniversary, a lot of the Blinks, their global fan base, they were very disappointed and they were very critical of how Blackpink and YG Entertainment didn't really put too much focus on their 10th year anniversary, which is a very big milestone in the K-pop industry. Something that, some groups that will go on world tours, they will open concerts just because of the 10th anniversary. But Blackpink, they really didn't even post that much content on their social media accounts. And after they received this kind of backlash from their fan base, the 4 members of Blackpink, they didn't make time to come together in Korea. But I think only for a day. And after their event with fans, they went back overseas because all 4 members, they're global superstars now. So they have so many promotions and activities abroad. Their schedule is very limited. So it really tells you the state of the K-pop industry for these top groups, and and how they're really at no choice of choosing between going overseas and promoting more at home.
Right. Then perhaps because of that particular reality, Chloe, several major K-pop groups are now reportedly giving priority to domestic fan clubs for concert ticketing. This, of course, in itself has triggered quite a bit of debate. Could you tell us more?
Yeah, so the idea is, for example, recently Stray Kids for their next concert in Korea, so obviously speaking about the Korean concerts, they decided that the first day would be only ticketing for the Korean based fan club, and on the next day the international fan club would be able to also access the ticketing events. So the idea behind that is mostly to find a way to fight against scalpers. So the people will buy a lot of tickets, great numbers of tickets, and once the event is sold out, they are able, because people still are in demand, they are able to sell those tickets at quite a higher price. So there's been quite a lot of elements that have been put in place by the government itself, by the labels as well, by the sailing, like ticketing agency, to try to avoid the scalpers. But so this is one of the idea there would be to make sure that if you are in Korea able to buy for yourself and showing your identity, then you can't be buying it and selling it to someone else. The problem is that to do that for international fans, when you're buying something in Korea on Korean website, you need to prove your identity, and that goes through having a Korean phone number where you can receive a short message to be able to get a specific code showing that it's you. The problem is if you don't live in Korea or if you don't have a Korean phone number, then you're left out, and that's what the foreign fans, so the people, not especially foreigners living here in Korea, but foreign fans outside internationally, I think that it's kind of a discrimination for them, because among the people who want to go to the concert, there's not only people who live in Korea, there's also people who would come to Korea for the event itself. And we saw it, for example, with the BTS comeback and the different concerts that they did. We had a lot of international fans coming to Korea, especially for those dates, and then staying for tourism as well.
Right. David, moving forward, after BTS announced a Grammy boycott, the Recording Academy reportedly signaled a possible review of the Asian pop category. I wonder, what's your takeaway from this event?
Yes, so earlier this week, CEO Harvey Mason Jr., he's the CEO of the Recording Academy, which hosts the Grammy Awards annually. He said that he's talked with his stakeholders, and that they came to a conclusion that a lot of these artists that they talk to a lot of the representatives of the Asian market in South Korea, in Japan, and in China for 2 weeks, and on and on. And they heard that a lot of these representatives, they felt misrepresented by the creation of the category Best Asian Pop Music Performance. And one of the big criticisms of the Grammys over the years is that it has today it has 100 categories for its categories that award these musicians. And as we know, BTS they went online, they went public, and said that they were not going to submit any music to the Grammys this year. So it really seems like, as you mentioned, the Grammys is a bit kind of backtracking due to the overwhelming public consensus that, yes, they did maybe make a mistake in creating this category, which really clumps all of these Asian artists into this one category. From my perspective, I really see BTS cementing themselves as the leader of K-pop, maybe even the wider region of Asian music. I think really BTS said that they're taking charge and they're standing up for what's something that they believe, and that many other musicians see eye to eye. But I think what really took me, what really made me notice, what I really noticed from this case is that it's just BTS's ability to start these social discussions, these debates, and I really think they're unmatched, in the world for their ability to do this as musicians. Their boycott did not only gain support from fellow K-pop groups and agencies, but even artists and groups from subgenres like hip hop, rock, Latin music, who have also felt sidelined by the Grammys in the past. They also chimed in the conversation. They also agreed that the Grammys should do better, in categorizing and organizing their award show, which is arguably the most influential event for music today. So as we all know, the global fan base of BTS, the ARMY, they're really known to be activists in these social situations. They were activists. They played a part in the Black Lives Matter movement. They made considerable aid during the COVID pandemic. They support global mental health programs, and they were rushing to the aid of the Australian brushfire recovery. regardless of the intentions of the Grammys, I know that they came out and said that we really wanted to push diversity for the musicians around the world. But I really think, and I think they also realize that they may have made a mistake with the creation of the category. Like I said, it's a little bit too broad to clump all these regions and all these musicians into this one group. And maybe there would have been less controversy if they just made a category for K-pop itself, as some of the other major American music shows like the MTV Music Awards and the American Music Awards does. And I know that it may be a little bit too late for BTS to maybe submit their music again, or for the Grammys to take back on their category, as the submissions to submit is this Friday. But even without a historic win at the Grammys, I think BTS really walks away with a big victory for themselves as a K-pop group. For one, they stood up against the Grammys, which really these global musicians like Drake and The Weeknd have done in the past, kind of cementing BTS in the same level. They really prove that they don't really need awards for publicity. They've got more publicity from this, from maybe even topping the Billboard charts. And they really showed their influence to the world. And I think BTS, they're the winners of this debate.
Right, indeed, then. Meanwhile, Chloe, the success of the Korean wave is inspiring cultural policies around the world. What aspects of Korea's cultural policy do you suppose are drawing international attention?
So I would say it's mostly obviously the government element of it that's the most inspiring for all the countries, especially the way our South Korea government is trying to transform K-culture into one of the national economic engines. So the idea is, I've been covering it, for example, for France 24 on K-pop Demon Hunter, the video, like the movie from Netflix, or the BTS comeback as well. We know that those success stories are bringing in tourists, and they're bringing in money as well, because people come to visit, they come to buy, or even abroad. The hallyu is just being amplified by this kind of elements. And so the goal from the South Korean government will be to attract 40 million annual visitors, foreigners. Currently, they are expecting 23 million people this year, and this is a specific year because of the BTS comeback. So, this is quite an ambitious goal. How they want to do that is different things. So they want to develop some new infrastructures, for example, big stadiums where you could go see only K-pop concerts, where the elements would be made so that you can have a very big crowd in the best decorum possible to be able to get the best music out of it. And also financial support. So, for example, they are making a fund for 10 small and mid-sized agency for K-pop that would be helped through the government through getting loans, for example, or help through intellectual property, because obviously when you want to go global and you want to go abroad, you need to be protecting well your intellectual property. And the other thing that's also been seen and talked about quite a lot, I think, is the choice to draw strengths from cultural elements. This is also interesting for a lot of countries that also have their own strong cultural elements, and they want to show them so that you don't only have Hollywood against the rest of the world. So this is, for example, the case again with BTS and their album called Arirang, or K-pop Demon Hunter, even though it was done through a Canadian studio, there were still a lot of Korean elements, and we can see it with, for example, the goods at the National Museum now are selling out so quickly because people have an interest now for Korean culture even more than before, and this is something that could be very interesting to other countries.
Right, indeed. I'm afraid that's all the time we have. Chloe, as always, thank you so much for your time and your thoughts.
Thank you.
David, thank you very much for your insights.
It was great to be here.
Right then, as K-culture continues to evolve, the question now is how Korea's cultural influence across the globe, of course, will shape its next chapter. Thank you for watching.